Hi friends, I have drawn this picture earlier in my last class. So today I wanted to color this and then put it on the site on the YouTube channel as well. So I wanted to show you the colors that I'm going to use. This is a new color palette box that I bought for this purpose that I'm going to try using in this class. And also I'm going to use some of the brush pens that I have. Not necessarily these colors, but some of the brush pens are not necessarily these kind either, but the brush pens. And then I'm going to use these round brushes here and some water to go along with. I have a paper towel with me, so I can use for if the water is excessive or if I have to dab water. This is basic watercolor techniques I'm going to use in this lesson. So let's get started. For the sky over here, before I do the sky, I wanted to do some of the greens over here, lighter greens, paler greens to blend into the sky. So I'm going to start with that. So here's my green, mix some light green and then touch of dark green to make it a different tone, and then use a lot of water to get started on these greens over here. Doesn't have to be very staying in their own lines. It's just have to have their own tone and color. I'm gonna pick more color as I'm adding in here. If I see that the color doesn't have brightness, I'm gonna add more color. Okay, so I'll come back and add some darker greens to give a depth of the picture. Okay, and then I have some greens over here. I'm gonna do the same thing. Use the lighter greens on this side. And wash off and then come back with a nice light green and then throw in the highlights. I'll come back and add the shadows later if I want. I just wanted to see the brightness of how the colors are right now. I'm gonna do the sky before I go further down. So I'm gonna start with these colors over here. They're all blues in here. So I'll start with this and see how that works. And then add probably a lighter value until I think it is a good color to start with. So that blue looks good to me. So I'm going to use the negative spacing technique, and then I'm going to leave some spots here and there. Then you can use wet on wet as well for this technique. I'm going to dab those into a cloud formation and then pick more color as I go along. My strokes are towards the right hand side, just showing that there is a cloud, making a cloud form. And I'm gonna do very light color and a lot of water so it looks like a cloud in the background. I'm definitely gonna leave those white spaces. And then I'm gonna pick a nice bright blue over here, and then I'll add some highlights in that. That gives the texture of what we are drawing. Okay, stop at that. I'll come back and add more details if I want to. Then I'm gonna start with the roof of the home. So I have some nice beautiful reds over here. I'm gonna pick some reds. I'm gonna pick that color over there and see how that looks. Looks good to me, so I'm gonna start drawing with that color. I want to add a little more orange to this. To pick a nice warmer orange color, and then keep going. So when I'm working with watercolors, I usually work my way from top to bottom, so I don't touch anything that I just finished. So I added a whole lot of oranges here, lighter tone oranges. So when I'm higher in this near the sky, I'm gonna do some lighter tones. Then as I'm going down over here, I'm gonna come and pick those reds that I started with, and then blend them into the oranges here, and then touch of water to blend them off. You don't want to use a lot of water, you will risk it running down. So you want to use touch of water and then give it a blend. If you go out of the lines, you can just dab with a piece of paper towel, or you can just leave it like that. That's fine. So watercolors, they look beautiful either way. I'm gonna give the depth over here by adding the darker reds, and then let that to dry. So this rim over here is darker, so I'm gonna pick the same darker tone that I just used, this one, and then just draw that. So I wanted to keep this bright. Okay, now for the part which is under the roof, I'm going to add a darker value, probably a brown, to this red that I already have here. So brown, darker value, darker red, then see how this looks. I need a shadow color under here, so if it is not showing up a shadow, I'm going to add some darker tone over here and see if I can bring a darker reddish brown. That looks good. So if your brush is big, just use vertical stroke, or pick a round brush which is smaller. I can come back and add some of this, some light over here. If I want to add light, I'm going to clean my brush, come back and then dab it over here, and then lift up some of the color that I just had, just to add some light. While I do the lift up, I'm going to also add a touch of the orange that I've been using to show the reflection of the color. There. So the area which is closer to this is also in shadows, so I'm going to come back, add those shadows, but I first wanted to do the basic colors in this section over here. So for that, I'm going to pick these yellows, which goes along with the colors that I have here already, and then I'm going to make some reddish pink colors, reddish brown colors for the bricks as well. For the bricks, the bigger bricks over here, the center parts are lighter in tone, so I'm going to add those yellows right in the center over here. So this is a whimsical home, that's why I'm going to do all bright colors. Keep it nice and bright. I don't need a lot of color, so I'm just running it down with the color that I just picked. Then I'm going to come back with adding the darker values. I have made this reddish brown in color here. I'm going to use the same thing. and then make strokes which look like bricks. They don't have to be anything clear. While you do that, you can add a value, a different value, just to give a highlight here and there. So I'll go back and put some of these colors that I made, add a darker version or a brighter version, and then keep doing the same thing. So I'm gonna mix a color which is in the foreground here and also in the background over here, which is the green, and a touch of yellow over here, the bright orange yellow, probably cadmium yellow, and then which has the brightness to it. And then I'm gonna add this color to add the brightness in the tone. At this point, I am basically trying to close in the lines that I have because my paint that I just did is already dried out. The darker values that you put earlier should give you the depth in the picture. So when I'm doing the colors over here, I'm going to add a touch of green over there, a little more green for the background, so it's going to look like blended in. I'll do the same thing over here just to give interest to the picture. So I'm adding that green to the yellow that I just mixed. Okay, so now I'm gonna do the, while that dries on the side, I'm gonna do the shadows in this area here. So shadows coming back to my color, shadow colors, and then I just glaze it. So take enough water so it is not very much runny, and then take the color which is a shadow color, and then glaze it around where you think the shadows are. If they're not darker enough, you can come back and pick more color. And then add it back to there. That gives a 3D look for the picture. I'll do the same thing over here because this area here is as well depth. So when I do that, I'm going to add more color to it, and then there's another layer of depth in here, so I'm going to add it a little more darker. So for that, I'm adding a touch of this darker blue or gray, and then do the same thing. So the color that I just drew has a darker gray in tone, which has some reds in it. So I'm gonna go ahead and add some blues as well to make it a shadow color, nice blue-gray shadow color. And then I'm gonna add to the depth of the drawing to increase the depth of the drawing. So I'm gonna add the shadows wherever I think. Go back and enhance the shadows right now. Okay, and then add shadows where you think they are in the picture. So these blocks over here have shadows in them as well. So I'm going to add those shadows. So while you are adding those shadows, squint your eye and see if you can see the 3D in it. These are the two blocks that I missed, so I can come back and add the highlights in them. So I'm picking the reds back in. So I think I can say it is done at this point. Add all those missing spots. Okay, that gives the depth of it. I did two colors in there, so I'm gonna give a nice bright blue over here, the bright blue into the window, and come back and add a little more color to it, but I'm just gonna draw this right now and then see if I need to add any shadows later on. Okay, that looks good. So to this blue that I just have, I'm gonna add the gray tone to make it a darker blue. I'm gonna continue the foreground over here, the steps, top of the steps, and the side of the step is darker in color, so I'm gonna mix my shadow color and then add to the depth. Okay, I purposely leave some of the light in here so that looks like negative spacing. I'm gonna add a nice bright blue for the door. So the blue that I have, the bright blue. Which is brighter than the color that I used here. It is the same color that I used for the sky. I'm gonna leave the white space here and there. Okay, that's so good. For the foreground, I'm gonna work on the greens. So I'm gonna do these greens over here, build up a nice dark green and a light green. This is a blue green here, so it is the foreground and the background. So I'm gonna mix a nice blue green and a dark green. So the shadow colors that I already have here, I'm gonna have a bright green going into it. So I have a sap green mixed into it. So it is like a dark green color. I'm gonna build my colors from the colors that I already used and then start right into it. If it is darker, make sure you have you are wiggling it in it so you can come back and add some shadows, some highlights. So that's your base color right now. So I'm gonna do my base color, and then that's the angle of light. So all these sides should be lighter green. So because I have already the greens in my area, I'm going to just take yellow and then hit a nice yellow in the areas which I think has light, so you can show a bright green light. And then when you see this area over here, it has a reflecting shadow in the background. I'm going to add those shadows once my background dries out. But for right now, I'm going to finish this wall over here. I'm going to use warmer colors over here as highlights. Come back and add the shadows later once it's dried out, but I'm going to do the blue. Okay, so because my area over here is dried out, I'm gonna pick a smaller brush and then start adding my shadows. I'm gonna pick some purples. Here's my purple. I'm gonna add the purple to my red shadows over here. And then add greens to it because it's behind the greens. There, that's a good shadow color. Now add the shadow color right in the background over here. Dabbing the color in and blocking the area where you think there is light. You squint and see, and then you can see if you're creating the depth or not. I'm going to cover up all this area over here because it's not visible and there is darkness in there. While I do that, I can change between couple colors over here just to give the illusion of depth. I'll add more water and then just blend it off over here. Okay, I'll also do a nice bright green over here. Just to highlight that. So the strokes that you already did should give a kind of a 3D look when you're doing that. So once the highlights that I did, I just used a little blending technique with the water. And then I have a foreground, I have the greens over here. I think these greens should be darker. So I'm going to add some darker values to block out this area here. I'm gonna do all darker values in here, the darker greens that I mixed up with the reds and the purples. So I'm gonna dab the color into it. So this I'm gonna pick green, couple greens here, and then go back and add all these greens into the darker area. I'll do the same thing using my other greens as well and hit some of these brighter spots right now. also I'm going to use yellow to hit the very spots in the end for the highlighting. So they don't match with the trees on this side. Okay, that's good. So I'm gonna do some darker values for the bricks over here. I'll let that dry and come back and add another tone to it. So I preserve the texture of the drawing. I'm gonna do the flowers right in here, or before the flowers I'm gonna just finish the fence over here. So I'll do the same blue that I have here, and then I will do some shadows as well. So the blues are like the highlights, and I'll leave the white room on the negative spacing. And the shadows, I'm gonna pick a shadow color. A little purple probably, and then add those shadows in there to create depth. Okay, I have a rock over here, so I'm going to do the rock as well, the stone. Then I'll come back and add some browns in there. Okay, now I'm going to do the flowers here, the hollyhocks. So I'm going to pick a color which is going to be closer to what I have in the background. I'm picking a brush which is slightly smaller, a round brush, and then I'll pick nice bright values here as highlights, and then darker values for the depths over here. So these values are the brighter ones. So assuming the light source over being over here, so all of this side is going to be lighter. So I'm going to draw some nice bright reds over here. And then I'm going to do the very darker value here, the darkest value that I have, and then see if I can just do the blending. So if you need to preserve the color, you don't use too much water, but if you have enough water already, use the water that you have on the paper. I'm going to leave some spots over here through the highlights. I'm going to just work on the depth over here. Okay, I'll come back and add a nice highlight. I'm going to pick a nice color, bright yellow, and then blend that yellow right into the top where you think a nice light is sitting in before your paint dries up. If your paint dries up, go ahead and pick some water and then start blending it over. I'm not going to go for more color because the color that I have is enough. Okay, so the centers are lighter as well. So for the lighter tone yellow, I'm going to use this one right here, which is lemon yellow, and then hit right in the center, and then let the water work its way for the blending. So the goal is to keep it lighter than the actual flower. So if you can manage doing that, that should be good. That's the first set of flowers over here. To complement the flower, I'm going to use a nice bright green color for the leaf. If your flowers are not yet dried out, just wait for them to dry out. Yeah, watercolors, you have to know when to wait. I'm gonna add the depth a little while later. Before that, I'm gonna finish the other flowers. Okay, finish the other flowers, and I have some flowers, the borders, but I did not do the centers, so I can show you. I'm gonna pick a nice bright orange for the centers. I'm gonna do the background over here, considering all of this area over here is darker, so I'm gonna add a touch of water before I start working, so it will be easier for me to blend off. Pick some darker greens. So I'm gonna pick more than one green. For the illusion of the depth. At this time, I'm going to add some texture to the drawing. So my strokes remain. If they're too poppy, I'm going to come back and then just blend them off at the ends by changing the angle of the brush. So I'm going to pick a shadow color here, a purple, then add to the greens. and add it in the shadow areas where I think there's very dark shadow to create the depth. So the spots that are missing over here need some highlights. So I'm going to add some nice yellow. To bring it all together. So the flowers, the leaves that are here, need some shadows in them. I'm going to add the shadows and then add the brightness back in there by using some greens, and then I'm going to pick a touch of blue just to get some bright greens there. Come back and add the highlight in there later. Okay, so now that the darker value is gone, I'm going to add a nice highlight to the greens. Some depths in the flower. If you think it's too bright, go ahead and add some depths in the flower. There, that's our background. So the tree that I have has some browns in it, so I'm going to mix my reds with a nice brown. And then start drawing. I can make some shadow color to give the depth in the tree. Then come and add the highlights with a brighter value, the brown that we picked. So now that is finished, I'm gonna go and add some colors over here to create the depth. This looks plain and flat to me, so I'm gonna do some shadow colors over here. Okay, now that is done. I'm gonna throw some highlights, yellow. And then leave it to that. You can come back and add more lighter value if you want to. I'll go ahead and finish the darker shadows. So I can show you where I can use the brush pens. Okay, for details like this, if you really want it to be brighter, you can add a brush pen. I just picked a color that I could reach, but yeah, feel free to add a color which you really want. And then you can, if you're using brush pens, you can use one on top of the other to get the illusion of depth as well. So I'm going to enhance this picture and then post it on the YouTube channel, Oral Doodle. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching the video.